Think about the last time you left a crowded room, closed the door behind you, and felt an overwhelming, crushing exhaustion. It wasn't a physical tiredness. Your muscles weren't aching, but something was off. Your soul felt drained, wrung out like a sponge. You spent the last 3 hours smiling at jokes you didn't even find funny. You nodded along to opinions you disagreed with completely. You calibrated the exact tone of your voice, the precise angle of your posture, and the carefully selected words of your mouth, all to ensure one terrifying simple outcome: that they would like you. And maybe they did. Maybe you walked away with their approval. But as you stand there, in the quiet of your own room, peeling off the layers of the evening, a quiet, haunting question rises from the depths of your conscience. Who exactly did they like? Because it wasn't you. We live in an era where likability is the ultimate currency. We have gamified human approval. From the moment we are born, we are trained to round off our sharp edges, to swallow our true convictions, and to present a sanitized, highly curated avatar to the world. We build a mask. At first, the mask is a tool. It helps us survive the playground, the workplace, the digital town square. But the tragic irony of the mask is that it is not a shield. It is a mold. When you hear it long enough, it begins to harden. It suffocates you because the soul needs air. And the mask has no lungs. It changes the way you speak until your words aren't even yours anymore. It changes the way you think until your thoughts are fearful anticipations of what the crowd demands. Eventually, you don't wear the mask. The mask wears you. You become it. The cost of wanting everyone to like you is not just anxiety. It is the complete, quiet, and unmourned death of your spiritual dignity. Today we are going to take a look at the anatomy of this invisible prison through the piercing psychology of Fyodor Dostoyevsky and the luminous wisdom of the Orthodox saints, to understand how we can finally tear the mask apart. Why do we do it? Why do we betray our own souls for the fleeting, unstable applause of people we don't even respect? It begins with a profound misunderstanding of love. We're born with a God-given desire for communion. We're meant to connect, to be known, and to be loved. But in a fallen world, this pure desire is corrupted into a desperate craving for validation. Love requires vulnerability. Validation only requires a good performance. Love is willing to endure conflict for the sake of truth. Validation flees from truth the moment it threatens the applause. When you decide that your primary goal in any social interaction is to be liked, you immediately place yourself in a state of subjugation. You're handing the keys to your inner peace to a stranger. You become a psychological chameleon, scanning the room, trying to read the micro-expression of others, to figure out who you need to be in this exact moment. But a chameleon has no true color of its own. This creates a terrifying internal split. The more you succeed at being liked for your false self, the more isolated your true self becomes. Every compliment you receive feels like a fraud, because you know they're applauding the mask, not the man beneath it. This is why some of the most universally liked and popular people are also the most profoundly lonely. They are starving to death at a banquet of fake praise. This constant performance creates a low-level chronic hum of anxiety, a state of overthinking that paralyzes. You replay conversations in the shower. Oh my god, did I sound arrogant? Did I offend them? Should I have laughed louder? You're living in a self-made panopticon, constantly monitoring yourself through the imagined eye of others. And it is here, in the suffocating underground of self-consciousness, that we meet the greatest diagnostician of the human mind, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky understood the sickness of the mask better than anyone. In his brilliant, agonizing novel, Notes from Underground, he introduces us to the underground man, a bitter, highly diligent, and entirely paralyzed individual. The underground man is consumed by what others think of him. He's hyper-aware, hyper-conscious. In the opening pages he declares, To be acutely conscious is a disease, a real honest-to-goodness disease. He desires to be respected, admired, to fit in with his former schoolmates who he secretly despises. He goes to dinner with them, desperately wanting their approval, and when they ignore him, he spirals into madness. He paces the room, trying to assert his dominance, but is utterly humiliated. Dostoevsky reveals the darkest secret of the people-pleaser: resentment. When you continually suppress your true self to cater to others, you do not actually grow to love them. You grow to hate them. You hate them for the demands they place on you, even though you're the one volunteering to meet those demands. You become spiteful. The underground man says, "I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man." This is the psychological paradox of wanting everyone to like you. You become a slave to the crowd, and eventually the slave dreams of taking revenge on his masters. The people-pleaser often harbors a deep anger beneath their pleasant smile. They feel entirely unappreciated for the massive amount of psychological labor they're doing to keep everyone comfortable. Dostoyevsky warns us that this obsession with the external gaze, how we look to others, completely robs us of our agency. In another of his masterpieces, The Brothers Karamazov, the wise elder, Father Zosima, delivers the ultimate antidote to the underground man's disease. Zosima tells a man struggling with vanity, "Above all, do not lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point that he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and so loses all respect for himself and for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love." Let's read that again. The man who lies to himself loses all respect for himself. Every time you put on the mask to be liked, you are lying to yourself. You are telling yourself that the truth of who you are is not enough. You are telling yourself that God's creation in you is defective and requires a PR team to manage it. Over time, this constant lying destroys your self-respect. And when you have no self-respect, you cannot truly love anyone, because you have nothing authentic left to give them. You can only offer them a mirror. We think we're being polite, but Dostoyevsky and the saints agree. We are actually practicing a deadly form of idolatry. If Dostoyevsky gave us the psychological diagnosis, the Desert Fathers gave us the spiritual name for the mask. They called it Vainglory. Saint John of the Ladder, writing in the 7th century, described vainglory as a three-pointed thorn. It is a subtle, shape-shifting demon. He noted that if a monk fasts, he becomes proud of his fasting. If he hides his fasting to be humble, he becomes proud of his secret humility. Vainglory is the idol of the crowd. It is the moment you stop standing before God and start standing before the theater of man. When you seek to be liked, you are essentially asking the world to validate your existence, because you no longer believe that being a child of God is enough. You have traded the eternal for the ephemeral. Think about how exhausting this idolatry is. To be liked by everyone, you must be a servant to everyone's shifting mood. If the crowd changes its mind, you must change your face. You are no longer a person, you are a reflection. Saint John of the Ladder warns that the vainglorious man is a free slave. He thinks he is choosing his path, but he is actually being led by a leash held by the opinions of others. This is why your soul feels so drained. You're participating in a form of spiritual adultery. But how do we break the leash? How do we stop being a reflection and start being a light? This is where we leave the underground of Dostoevsky and climb the peaks of Mount Athos to meet the humble wanderer, Saint Paisios. Saint Paisios of Mount Athos was perhaps the most liked man of the 20th century, yet he never spent a single second trying to be liked. He lived in a tiny cell with no running water. He spent his nights in prayer and his days carving wooden crosses. When university professors, politicians, and broken souls arrived at his door, he didn't check his reputation before speaking. He only spoke truth, often with a wit that cut through the visitor's mask like a surgeon's knife. He called this freedom spiritual dignity. Paisios taught that the man who fears God fears nothing else, but the man who does not fear God fears everything, especially the judgment of his neighbor. He understood that the logical mind, the part of us that calculates how to be safe and likable, is often the greatest hindrance to divine grace. And this is how we are brought to Saint Paisios' most famous parable, the bee and the fly. Paisios observes that there are two types of people in this world. The first is the fly. If you ask a fly if there are any flowers in a garden, it will say, "I don't know, but I know where the rubbish is. I know where the filth is." The fly's entire reality is a search for what is broken, what is unclean, and what is popular in the gutter of human opinion. When you live to be liked, you become the fly. You're constantly scanning for the rubbish, the one person who doesn't like you, the one criticism on social media, the social faux pas you made. You ignore the fragrant lilies of your life because you're obsessed with the unclean things. But the bee, even in a field full of thorns and waste, the bee only sees the flowers. It ignores the filth. It doesn't care about the reputation of the garden. It only cares about the nectar. To kill the mask is to decide one and for all to be the bee. It is to realize that the rubbish of human approval is not your food. Your food is the nectar of the heart, the secret and quiet communion with God that requires no audience. So how do we finally rip the mask from our skin? How do we stop the suffocation? The saints don't offer a self-help hack. They offer a death and a resurrection. They offer Hesychasm, the practice of inner stillness that brings us closer to Christ. In the silence of prayer, the mask cannot breathe. The mask requires an audience to survive. It feeds on the eyes of others. When you go into your inner closet and close the door, the audience disappears. You are left alone with the truth. At first, this is terrifying. Without the mask of the nice guy, the successful professional, or the likable friend, you might feel like you're nothing. But it is only when you become nothing in the eyes of the world that you can become everything in the eyes of God. Saint Paisios didn't need the bears to like him, yet they walked by his side. He didn't need the birds to obey him, yet they felt silent every time he spoke. He had regained the pre-fall state because he had abandoned the post-fall mask. The cost of being liked is your soul, but the reward for being free is peace. Stop being a fly looking for the rubbish of validation. Turn the dial to humility. Seek the nectar, kill the mask.